Okay, today I am going to hit you with a very late to the party review of the Shift Cowl by Andrea Mowry. So I have actually knit two of these now, and I will get a little bit into why in a second, but let's dig into the details of the Shift Cowl. So like I said, I am very late to the party on this one. This pattern was first published in 2018. It is 2024. It's been quite a while, so you might be well aware of this pattern by now. But because it was like the majority of my knitting this January, I thought I would talk you through my experience with the Shift Cowl. So this pattern calls for 3 50-gram skeins of sport weight yarn. She uses Spin Cycle for like everything, and uses 3 shades of Spin Cycle yarn for this. I ended up using pretty much exclusively fingering weight yarn for these, and it still is just about the exact same size. Frankly, I wouldn't want mine much larger. So there is obviously wiggle room in what kind of yarn that you are using for this project. To get the kind of diagonal shaping that you have here, this shawl is knit on the bias. So you start off with a very small number of stitches, you increase out, and then you keep, I think, increasing on one side, stop increasing, and then go back in. So you basically knit a very long kind of bandana shape, and then it is seamed together in the back. This one obviously shows it much more because the colors are so distinct. And that's what gives you the kind of tube with the point on it for the bandana cowl. And as you were doing obviously all of the shaping for the actual shape of the cowl, it is knit in a mosaic pattern. So you are doing basically knitting and slipping stitches and working one color at a time to come up with this kind of color work pattern. Now, mosaic knitting is not really my favorite thing to do, but once I kind of got into the flow with this one and learned like how the pattern itself works, because there's 2 kind of mosaic motifs that repeat back and forth and back and forth. So once I understood how those work, it made it a lot easier to keep working on it and just paying attention to when you're increasing, decreasing. So for my very first version, I have it is hard to see the difference in the colors, especially if you use a color changing yarn, which both of these use a little bit of. But the first color on this one is gray, which you can see here. That is Cloudborn Fibers Alpaca Highland Natural in the color Smoke Heather. The next color is blue. That is Patons North America Croy Socks in Cadet Colors Blue. And then the last color is this green here. This is the Plucky Knitters Plucky Feet in the color Oscar. So what I found as I was knitting this one is that the colors that you get kind of most in your face, around your face, are actually colors 2 and 3. So as I was knitting this one, actually the first color that I used is the green. And I would consider that like color 1 to be the background color for all of this. And then the other 2 colors are the little blips for the mosaic knitting. And I thought that starting off with that darkest color, that would put the darkest color by the face. But actually, as you're wearing it, because this is kind of scrunched up, you're really getting mostly colors 2 and 3 that are by your face, which I think makes colors 2 and 3 the most important to make sure that they look good together, and the most important to make sure that you like how they look by your face. So when I was knitting this one, I actually changed or rearranged how the colors were supposed to work in order to have the colors where I wanted them. So obviously you can do whatever you want, but the way that Andrea did it was kind of in a gradient from darkest to lightest. And what I ended up doing for this one was just completely rearranging the colors. So the very first color that I used is the medium pink. That's kind of the background of what you can see now. That was Sweet George's yarn Merino Silk Lace in the shade Oxblood, and I held that double. And that is a very like soft and silky yarn, which I think is very nice, but it does make it not kind of stand up as much if that is something that you are interested in. And then the next shade, that's kind of the background shade 2, was Neighborhood Fiber Company's Studio Sock Yarn in Waverly. And then my very last shade, which is kind of speckled throughout, but the very bottom background color here was Noro Kakigori yarn in the colorway number 21. So what I did on this version is I worked a teeny tiny little swatch just to see how the different colors would play together so I could choose my favorite to be this section, which is kind of the stripe that I feel like you get most by your face. So if we go like this, as you can see, the very, very first colors are here, but that kind of gets tucked away. And then you get all of that by your face, if that makes sense. Now, obviously, these are much more of like an accessory knit than they are for like actual warmth. However, my husband and I went out to Toadstool National Park a couple of weeks ago and were surprised with a random snowstorm. We were fully unprepared for it because we didn't think it was going to snow. I happened to have this, so it was really nice to actually have something tucked in around my neck. And I was literally wearing a denim jacket as we were tromping around out there, but it was enough to like keep some of the wind out, keep the snow out, and keep myself a little bit warmer, which was very much appreciated. I do really like cowls. I think they're just like something that's very easy to throw on and wear. And they're lightweight, and it's just like a quick, easy, satisfying project. There's a lot that I really like about cowls as opposed to like the big bulk of a shawl. Obviously is going to keep you warmer, but if you want something that's just a little bit more easy to move around in, you don't need to be all bundled up. I do think a cowl is a really nice option, and it's cute. I definitely do think that I would knit this again. Like I said, I used fingering weight yarn for most of this. And I think like if you end up with kind of oddballs of fingering weight yarn, this would be a great project to work on too, especially if all of the colors kind of work together. Obviously you'd have more ends to weave in. I do think it would be a great option as like a stash buster. I definitely foresee more shift cowls in my future. I do not think that I would knit the full like shift shawl. I think it's actually called the night shift. That I think I would get really annoyed with the mosaic on, but I think this is just small enough that it doesn't feel quite as tedious. I'm not the biggest mosaic fan, but I do like this pattern enough that I would probably revisit it again in the future. That's all that I have to talk about on the shift cowl. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and I will see you soon. Bye.